So welcome to the Ask Bosco powered by Modo 25. Are you ready for GA4 panel session and discussion? In a minute, I'm going to introduce Mike, who's one of our lead data scientists and all-round guru on all things Google Analytics. And really, we want this to be as interactive as possible. So ask away in the chat or the Q&A. We've also got Abby on who can help coordinate the answers. We'll try and take as many of those live as we can. And then if there's time at the end, we can hang around if you want. One of the requests from the SEO webinar that we did a couple of weeks ago was actually people wanted to have a sort of an after party and ask more questions of our experts. So feel free at the end to stay on. If you do want to get a sort of, are you ready for a GA4 migration, or how's your migration gone? Everybody on this webinar, we are offering a sort of free GA4 migration audit. So just a sort of a quick bullet point checklist that Mike and his team can execute for you. So that's something for coming on this. There's a little thank you from us. If you want, just email your website address and your name, and we'll get back to you. So just email me at askbosco.io. We'll get back to you and we'll arrange a time and the right accesses to give you a quick audit for free. So I suppose firstly what I want to do is introduce why are we authorized to talk about this, who we are. Some of you, it's nice to see we've got some of our customers on, we've also got some of our partners on, but we've also got some people we've not met before. So it'd be rude of me not to introduce who we are and why are we authorized to talk about this. So, and apologies for the funny light. I'm actually in our phone booth in our London office. So, and the lighting's a little bit strange. So I keep disappearing. Modo 25, we are an in-housing specialist, and we help brands over time take control of their digital marketing and bring it in-house if they wish to. So, we're a full-service agency. We do all the agency services you would expect: PPC, SEO, etc. But with the end goal, if you want to bring that in-house over time, that we can empower you to do that, help you even recruit and train your team. So that's something to do. And then sitting behind this, we have our data-driven marketing AI platform called Bosco, which can help you organize all your data into one place and then predict the future. So that's really where our authorization and our experience in data comes from. And Mike's been working in GA for a long time and has completed already many GA4 migrations, and hopefully with the questions from the audience, we can have a really healthy discussion. I'm going to sort of just have a little chat with Mike in a minute about what have been the biggest changes and challenges that we've seen so far. There is a slightly bigger picture behind Modo 25, and we actually, when I set the business up, so we named it after an orphan who lives called Modo, who lives at a Ugandan orphanage, and she represents 280 other children. And as a company, we raise lots of money. Only 2 weeks ago, we did a company Tough Mudder, where we raised over £1,000, and we're regularly running different charity events. And also over a third of our team actually donate some of their salary every month to help the children in Africa. And we help clothe, educate, and take these kids out of this slum who are homeless. And that's all organized by a guy called Bosco. And we actually named our software after Bosco. So we're not just pretending to be sort of some CSR friendly business. We actually put charity at the heart of what we're doing. But the question we try and solve as a business for all our clients is, where do I invest my next dollar or my next pound? Because in digital marketing now, with all these different channels, we've got so many different places we could invest our money. So we're regularly asked, and I used to always be regularly asked when I was in agency world before, and we'd go away and we'd play with some spreadsheets, but actually wouldn't it be nice to just press a button and work out where should I be investing my money, and how can I hold my team or my agency and to account and understand exactly what is going on and what should they be doing. And it often feels like you've got this sort of channel gambling machine going on. So and really you're sort of putting money into different channels and not really knowing why. And it's become a Google first world. So these are the sort of problems we're trying to fix as a business and help people take control of their data and really understand which channels should they be investing in. And this is really complex. And it's one where what we want to do is to get all your data into one place in a sort of accurate, easy to use format. And then what we want to do from there is enable you to ask smarter questions and ultimately make better decisions. And all of this actually starts with Google Analytics and your Google Analytics tracking. So that actually sits at the core of it, but it's not now just your Google Analytics. If you think about it, you've got Facebook, you've got Amazon, you've got other off-platform sales taking place and data taking place. So GA is part of the problem, but ultimately having some sort of third-party dashboard in the future is going to become essential. And we'll talk about later about how having a dashboard such as Bosco could really help you in this whole migration process. If you take all your data out of the current Universal Analytics, you've then got a copy of it. So you're not going to lose your year-on-year comparison if you don't migrate in time. So I'm not going to give you a full demo of Bosco, but what we do have as a platform is a fully connected I suppose if you spend money on things like Funnel or Supermetrics or any of these sorts of platforms to pull your data together, or Tableau, or Bosco could replace all of that and give you accurate, useful information all in one place across all your channels. And this is Mike's actually one of the leads who's helped build all this. So as you can see in this example, all these channels are all organized all into one place to then help you make better decisions. So I'm not going to spend ages talking about Bosco. We're here to talk about GA4, but what Bosco does do is it helps you save time, have actionable insights, ultimately make more money, and it improves efficiencies. So these are some of our great clients who use Bosco. And now we're going to get Mike on. So Mike, do you want to switch your camera on? Turn your mic on. Welcome to the show. I feel like a TV host. So if you want to start, Mike, by asking, let me just get rid of that. Oh, that's not great. If you want to start by asking, introducing yourself and give me a bit of background. How long have you been doing this? What's your story?
Yes, I'm Mike. I'm lead data science here at Modo25. I've been working here for 2.5 years, but I've got over 10 years experience in digital marketing, digital data. That's from setting up Google Analytics using Google Tag Manager, and once all that is set up, how we can use that data to make better decisions. So worked with quite a range of different clients and worked on a wide variety of different products. But yeah, that's a quick summary of who I am.
And you absolutely live and breathe analytics on a daily basis. So I'm hopeful in these questions I might chuck you a few curveballs in that you haven't actually prepped for, and we can see if you really do know your stuff. So before we get going though, we're just going to quickly do a couple of polls. I'm going to launch a poll, which is basically, have you migrated yet? So we just want to get a gauge on, so if you could just quickly answer that. And then we're going to ask a secondary question on what type of website are you? Because again, there's different things we should be considering when we're migrating, whether you're an e-commerce business or whether you're a lead gen B2B business, or whether you're as just a content platform or a content website. So 69% of people have migrated, and 31% of people haven't. So and then I suppose the next question is, what type of site are you? What type of site do you manage? So I'm assuming, knowing most of our audiences, you'll probably be e-commerce, on a few lead gen. So yeah, so let's just share that. But most people, over 80%, are e-commerce, which is what we'd sort of expect from our audience. So I suppose I'm going to stop sharing the screen now, and we're just going to have a chat, Mike, and we're going to get into the nuts and bolts of GA4 and what's involved. So hopefully everybody can see us, so we've stopped sharing the screen. And what is, Mike, I suppose, within GA4, what do you see as the biggest changes, right? So we were discussing beforehand, Universal Analytics has been around since when?
2005.
Right, so this is what, 17 years. So it's almost since the beginning, you'd say.
Yeah. So we was having a conversation just before this, and I said about smartphones started to come into play around 2010 and started to become more mainstream around 2015. And today, how we use the internet is totally different to what was there in 2005. So it's no surprising to me that GA4 is a totally new suite. And the main differences are how tracking works. It is totally different to Universal. It's around tracking events. So a page view is an event, where in Universal Analytics, you add the hits, and you can then also add additional tracking to track clicks and other things, but everything in GA4 is an event. The other main big
And
change.
what do you mean by an event? Why is that different to what currently happens?
So the element of an event means that it can be used across different technology. So it could be an app, it could be a website, it's as long as that bit of code can fire, it's an event. And here is a page view. Here's, you've downloaded a form. Here you've started a video. As long as you can add a small snippet of code which says this is an event, it then pushes it to GA4, and then you can track it. So
should that make tracking better across the sort of full funnel and different interactions of like multi-touch points and things?
Yeah, it makes it more robust. It also is built for the future. So this is why Google have done this. They're thinking long term of how can they make the product better, more flexible, used for a wider audience. Yeah.
Okay. So apart from the event tracking changes, what are the other big changes that you'd notice if you logged into GA4 now?
Change is the interface. So as soon as I logged in, it was just like, this is totally different. How does it work? It's kind of like a custom. You can make it and make it feel like your own, and how you would use it, John, versus how I would use it would have totally different dashboards. And it means that I can get into the nitty-gritty stuff. You could just see the top level numbers. So it is very customizable.
And is that on a user level as well? Could you do that on a different user level?
User level, but also across different sites. So you can share it with everyone across the site that has access to it. But it's, yeah.
Okay. And is the danger here though, if it's almost like you log in and you've got to build it from the ground up and it's all new and clean, is the danger not that everybody goes, well, I'm used to this report and this report and this report, and they just replicate what they used to have, and they only used to have what they had because that was only what was available. But potentially this is actually, it'd be almost like if you bought a plot of land to go build a new house and you just built a replica of your old house on the new plot of land. Is that a danger, do you think?
Yes, it is. And I actually did this for one of our clients, and I took advice from different teams within Modo. And I said, what are the common reports and common things you actually use within Universal Analytics? And let's see if I can do exactly the same in GA4. I did around 20 reports, and there was only one which was like, oh, I need to go away and actually think about this. I could replicate everything else.
Yeah, but is that not, though, a risk if clients are demanding, I just want to have the same as what I used to have, when actually we could have something a lot better?
Yeah, it is. It's a risk, and it's an element of change, and people adapting to the change as well. So people kind of have got accustomed to Universal because it's been around for years and years. They've just added little things to it over time, made small changes. Now they're in a position of, here's a brand new product, and I can see them making changes to it and get it up to speed to what it was before.
And is there a view that we're all going to get migrated onto this, and then this is going to be a low-end version, and to unlock the premium features, Google's going to start charging everybody? What's your view on that?
I think, yes, it will be like that. I think they've added some new features which weren't available there under the old standard version, but it's still, there'll be a premium, and that will be down to usage probably.
Right. Okay. What volume of traffic, or volume of sales, or volume of traffic?
Volume of events that are going through.
And is it, because I know in Universal it used to be sometimes when you get past a certain point, it would then be sampled, and you'd be almost forced to go and buy the expensive version of 360 or whatever. Is this sampled, or when are the thresholds within this one?
Yes, it will still be sampled. One of the quite interesting things about like the reporting, I'm going to turn it on its head slightly and go from like a user point of view. So you can't identify individuals. When it gets to and you drive into the more granular data, it'll just capture everything as other, and it'll kind of go, this is the other pot, and it's so you can't really understand which customers are who.
Right, okay, that's quite interesting. And what are the other sort of interesting changes that you've seen that you think the audience might be interested in?
One of the very big interesting changes I've seen from a marketing point of view is the channel grouping. So we use like PPC, affiliates, SEO, and we use the UTM tracking to kind of define where that should all go. Now in GA4, they have made it prescriptive of this channel grouping has to match this UTM tracking. And before they had a default setting and you could go into the admin and you could make different rules and you could create new channels. GA4 is like, it's this way or it's unrecognized. And it makes things easier from like myself if I jump from a different site. And so you could have different people manage different sites, agencies across different clients. It means that everyone's the same, they're singing off the same hymn sheet, and it just makes things easier. One less thing to go and look at. If you start questioning the data, you know that is correct. And Google have a full a web page just of like, here are all the rules. You need to tag it up like this for it to fall into this bucket.
So with that though, that then would mean when we migrate, we're going to have to change all our UTMs and all our tracking, and almost when we do a new campaign, we have to think about that and change our process or our system of doing that.
This is like one of the little hidden changes which I would recommend doing now. Of go look at this Google site of what rules are in place.
We'll do a blog afterwards and we'll share. Exactly
you'll be actually surprised that most of the rules that are in there are covered. It's only very small edge case scenarios. So for example, like social, they've got a list of like 200 domains. And it's like, if it's any of these that appear in like the source, it is social.
Wow. And is that, do they differentiate? I'm sure they do, but I'm just asking because my job is to ask the silly questions. Is they'll be differentiating though in social between paid social and organic social?
Yeah, they do. So they'll use, here's a list of 200 sites of what can be defined as source, but then how the medium is defined. Is it CPC? Does it say paid social? There's basically a reject expression which will determine, is it paid?
It's like this we didn't discuss this one before, but I'm going to ask it anyway because I'm interested, and if I was listening, I'd be interested. If one of the biggest challenges the business world and e-commerce world had is iOS 14 tracking within Facebook, and Facebook not picking up, Facebook claiming credit for everything, and none of those transactions are happening in GA in our analytics. Is this going to improve that picture or not, or will it make no difference?
There's some cases it will. So there'll be an element of, if you're on your iPhone and you have a Google account and you're using Chrome and you've changed, you accept the terms and conditions within your Google account, you can actually turn on Google Signals within Google Analytics 4, which then means that you can do cross-device tracking and other bits and pieces like that. So it will help.
Almost cross-app tracking within my phone as well, and cross-device between my phone and my
laptop. As long as you're signing in with your Google account. So with me, I'm on Android. I sign into all my apps with my Google account. It then means that everyone knows who I am.
Google knows everything about you, Mike.
Yeah, I know. But for you, like on an Apple, the changes they've put in place, it will still be a bit difficult, but you will be able to track a large chunk of, yes, there's still a traffic, you're still a user coming to the site, yes, there's still a sale, but it's that stitching up of you're the same person coming back, which will be a bit harder.
Yeah. So I suppose one of the biggest things we're always trying to solve and help our clients with is sort of how to sort out your different investments in different paid media channels. How will GA4 handle this to what we've been doing before in sort of the standard universal analytics?
Very good question. I think attribution is a big change in GA4. So in universal analytics, you had attribution. It was there under the multi-channel funnel report. You had multiple attribution rules, but you could only go there to look at that model you're interested in. GA4 has turned it on its head, and there's basically 7 models you can choose from. They're all excluding direct, and you can just pick one of them and it changes it across the whole account.
Can you build your own models, or do you have to pick one of those 7?
You've got to pick one of those 7. So there are ways you can get around it. So if you export all the data, you can then apply your own attribution model outside the platform, but you're within GA4, you're stuck with those 7 models.
And so far, what's your view on those? Is that, are they the right 7? Is what as an attribution specialist, what's your views on this? Is it better, worse, no different?
So
too early to say?
There's, by default, it's a data-driven attribution model. So they're saying that's the one you should be using. My concern about that is you don't really know what it's doing. There's not a lot of information of like how it's calculating that, but the others that are there, are very standard. It is quite clear what they're doing, and the difference is very similar. So it's like, here is a linear one, but they've excluded direct. So it is similar to the old one, but a bit better. But from my experience, is just being able to explain and understand what is going on with attribution means it's easy to explain to the wider business and the people who are like setting the budgets. And if you're just saying it's this AI that's doing it, it's quite hard to explain the benefits of it.
And with this, do you think more people are going to get the head around attribution and actually start using an attribution model? So we might start seeing more people investing in a full funnel sort of strategy rather than just chasing the last click, as we often see.
Yeah, I think it will, because straight away as you're setting up, you've been asked that question, which model do I need to be using? And most people will just stick to that default. But when you then start comparing that to the others, it opens that question straight away. Yeah.
Okay. And if you're thinking about migrating now, but you're worried about losing your data or something not happening, or not being able to have the report for the trading meeting on a Monday morning, can you run your the current GA setup alongside when you migrate, sort of like as a little sort of sandbox or testing to see if is it picking everything up? How does that work?
Yeah, so basically GA4 was launched in October 2020, so 2.5 years ago. The Google recommendation was you should put this live as soon as possible and keep your universal analytics going at the same time. Now, I've only come across one instance where we were looking at a WordPress site and they were using a plugin to integrate their Google Analytics tracking, which then meant that the plugin they were using was one or the other. So you couldn't have both at the same time, but nothing's stopping you from getting another plugin, so one uses Universal, one uses GA4. Some of them enables you to have both of them at the same time. So yes, you can have both of them running. And
you mentioned it's been around a while. Why suddenly is the panic on now? And why are suddenly clients sort of panicking about migrating now? Because Google is saying it's not migrating, it's not switching off till July next year. Why is that a concern?
So most people are starting to implement it now is because of the year-on-year comparison. So by the time Universal is sunset and you start using GA4, you've got that year-on-year comparison. How well did you do last year at the same time zone? So now we're in August and it's sunsetting in July. We're past that point of you're going to have a year-on-year comparison. So it's, can we get migrated as soon as possible and have it set up?
But if you were using a third-party dashboarding tool, such
Yeah.
as Bosco. There are other tools available, which would be like the BBC. But if you were using something like that, where you put all your historical data into the cloud and you've got access to it, does that negate that problem?
Yeah, so as long as you can say, here's a cutoff date and I want to use this as the historical data, and you can match up the exact same data. So for this will be potentially your sessions, your if it's an e-commerce site, how many sales are happening, how much revenue, and you're then matching it to channels. Yeah, there's no reason why you can't export one from one system and export the new GA4 data and combine it to get your year-on-year comparison.
Right. Okay. Well, that's interesting. And if you were to sort of set someone's up now, like someone says, right, set me up, how would you sort of approach it? Where do you sort of start? What's the sort of, have you got like a little Mike Thompson GA4 checklist, and what do you give and what do you go for?
So I try and keep it simple, and I've got like 4 steps. So the first one is get the base tag setting up. So you're tracking all the page views, is what customer standard events are there. You get that implemented. Then you start looking at step 2 being the admin area. So do I need to make any changes? Say yes to this, no to that. Do I need to do anything around the tracking itself that's in that admin and linked to other Google products? Then I'd then start looking at the conversion. How are we defining conversion? So what needs to be tracked on site? Every site is different. It's going to be done in different ways. So we work with lead gen clients, we work with e-commerce, they're totally different way of setting up. So that's my step 3. And then step 4 is review it. So you have it running a week, go back, review the data for, is page views all correct? Is the conversions all correct? Is there anything which is standing out in the data which doesn't look quite right? And then refine. So it goes through that circle.
Yeah, so we've got one other question just come in, and I think it's a great question. So thank you, and we're going to answer it live. So the question is what information sources do you normally go to when you're sort of researching and trying to set up anything in GA4? So are there like online blogs, guides, tutorials? Is there anything you would recommend? So like, I suppose we're talking now, and you're the specialist and the expert in this, but where does the expert go to find out your stuff?
Yeah.
And I suppose if whatever you mention here, we will share in the blog notes and send around on email to everybody afterwards. But yeah, that's a great question. It's like, it's quite new. It's quite, not everybody knows everything yet. Where would you go to sort of have a look and learn about this stuff?
So Google have an extensive list of how to do most things. So when this was a brand new product, that was the only source. I'm a very visual person, so I tend to go to YouTube and kind of go, how do you set this up? And people have quite a few like how-to guides of how to do it. I think after this, there's like 3 websites which I go to. I'd have to dig out their names. I've just got them favorites, and we can actually,
well, we can share them after this. Yeah.
And just go through that. There are some people who they live and breathe this, and they go for the most complicated, like how would you do this? So it could be something that's simple. Well, it's not simple. It could be something like cross-domain tracking. How would you set that up? There is people out there that have already done this, and they've written content on this.
Well, I think that's the point, isn't it? You don't want to be learning by your own mistakes, and it's we want to make sure that you avoid making mistakes that the people have made and get the best setup if you're going to set it up new. So, and I suppose, what other recommendations would you have when you're setting this up? So I suppose a bit like that is one of them is go see what your other people who sell similar stuff to you have done. But what other recommendations would you have when you're setting this up?
So one of the features which I would recommend was there in Google Analytics 360, and it is linking to BigQuery. So this is where it goes and dumps all the raw data. This is now available in just the standard version of GA4. So that means anything which is tracked, it pushes all the raw data to a database. And once it's in that database, you've got more flexibility of what you can do with that data. you can then pull it straight into Data Studio or another data visualization platform. You can create custom scripts to analyze it in a totally different way to how Google would actually process it and serve it back to you in GA4. The other one I would probably recommend is that Google Signals, which I mentioned to you earlier, of there's a turn on, turn off option within admin. I would recommend going and doing a bit of research, understanding what it is, and then you make the decision on if you want to use it or not. But from what I've read around like the cross-domain tracking and the ability to have more personalized ads, it's like a beneficial to the end user.
And is some of that signal stuff going to get around the cookie consent thing? Do you think that's another reason why it's there, or is it going to get affected by the cookie
think that's why it is there, because it's Google using their systems to serve their products, and because they're not using a cookie, they kind of know who you are because of your device and what browser you're signed in on. It means that they can kind of mitigate the cookie element of it.
Yeah, no, well, that doesn't surprise me that Google's benefiting from that. That's always.
Yeah. There is an element of the cookie rule that if you do decline, it will not serve the ads, and it will not fire the GA tracking onto your site. So they are confining by the rules. It just means if you are, you'll get better and more information, but Google will not surface that information about the end user. It's just kind of going, here you go, this is a customer journey. Yeah,
and I suppose if you are interested in this whole post-cookie world, on August the 25th at the same time, we're going to have a what's the future of cookieless tracking, and how are we going to be able to ensure that we still hit the right potential customers on the right device at the right time with the right message, because that's all going to change how we do things. Although I think some of that's moving down the road a little bit with the recent changes, but it's still an important thing to start thinking about your first party data. So I suppose the other thing is, I suppose this is quite new now, but I think you've got a view that this is going to just keep evolving and improving. So I suppose if you a bit like the start of the football season, Mike, it's like, well, is Man U going to finish above Leeds United? This is a big prediction time. If we looked at the table now, Leeds United is definitely ahead of Man U. So my prediction is that's going to stay like that for the rest of the season. So. What does the future hold, really? What does the future hold for GA4, and how do you see it evolving from where it is now?
So I think there'll be a steady stream of new features which will just get dropped and not a lot of publicity made about them. So an example of this is about 2 months ago, Google just went, here is the UTM tracking of content and terms. So when we first started using GA4, I logged in and went, where's this data? How can I get it? So basically the same as like ad group and keywords. So I was just like, I cannot report on that. This is missing. How am I supposed to use that data? So about 2 months ago, that's now there. It's been enabled. It's something else you can report on. How we were getting around it was we just created a new custom dimension because it's there on the page, on the URL and we just pull it in that way. So I can see little changes like that, which will ultimately make the product better. So another example might be, there's the explore window for building your own reports. Now, I've gone and built a load of reports. I've then shared it with the team, but then the team's logged in and go, I can't edit that. I'm the owner of that report. I cannot give edit permission to anyone. They can't even change the date on it. So it's like, it's prescriptive to them. So it's like the last 30 days, the last 7-day report. They can't go, I want this same report for this custom date range being 2 months ago. So I can see them making little changes like that to make the product better. We mentioned attribution earlier. I can see them doing a bit more around that, and it could be a few additional reports that are available in GA4. I have no idea, and I don't know what their roadmap is, but I can see them making changes quite quick in this next year for the sunset of the old Universal Analytics.
And do you think this is gonna, the way they've set it up around all these events, is this going to enable them? So a few years ago, no one would have ever thought about TikTok and this app where you sing along. And I suppose a few months ago or years ago, no one has thought about Be Real, and this is going to be a challenger to Instagram. And actually, people are going to be notified you've got to do your Be Real now, and it becomes a thing. As more and more places where people interact with your brands, is this basically set up to help track all of that?
So my understanding is it will be exactly the same as what was there for Universal Analytics. So if you've got an ad, say on TikTok, as long as you're putting the UTM tracking on there and someone clicks and goes through to your website, it is then tracked in GA4. Now, what's the interesting thing is it's still a single tool focused around Google. It's not allowing you to import all of this additional data from the other data sources. So like for Bing, Facebook, TikTok, you can import it, but you've got to use third-party tools. You've got to do manual uploads. They're not making it easy to integrate, so not many people do it.
So it's still a Google tool to tell you your e-commerce traffic from your website and maybe some marketing sources. It's not a universal tool that covers everything.
No.
Okay.
So from my point of view, working with marketing, you've got a conversion. It is a good cross platform. So what is the customer journey and understanding how well that investment's doing. When I look at all the other different platforms, I kind of go, right, Facebook, they're going to favor their own ads over everything else. Bing, they're going to favor their own ads. So it's like, were they somewhere in that journey? Have we served something? So it's not so those platforms aren't really an attribution suite. This is kind of an attribution suite / what's happening on your website.
Right. Okay. No, that makes sense.
Just before you, I've always remembered it as being like in the Universal Analytics of like ABC. So it's like acquisition, how have you got to the website? So that's your A. Your B is your behavior. So what have you done on that website? And then C is your conversion. What's the ultimate goal? So I've always remembered it like that. And I'm surprised they didn't migrate that philosophy over to the new one. They've kind of renamed things to make it a bit easier and clearer. But when it was described to me as being ABC, it became really clear and easy to understand.
Yeah, no, that does make sense. I'm just going to share a quick blog that our supporters just shared with me that covers sort of what will change. So don't jump off here and go start reading the blog. I think Mike probably wrote it, did you? Or one of your team wrote it. I'm going to share that with everybody. Have a look at that afterwards. We've got a couple more questions coming in. And this is what I want, and then we're sort of we've got another sort of 4 or 5 minutes, then we'll wrap up. If you want to stay on and grill Mike, we can come on, we can turn your cameras on and we can have an interactive chat. Or if you want to just request the free audit or migration ready audit or post-migration check, we can do that. So I suppose, is goals and funnels visualization still available in GA4? If so, what about whereabouts in GA4 would you set this up?
So let's start with goals. So goals have been replaced. They're now an event and it's a conversion. So in the admin section, well, it's not even in the admin section. They've got a new area called configure. So anything which is defined as an event, there's like a little toggle to say this is a conversion. So it's no longer called goal, it's conversion, and you select the event you're interested in. So there's that. The funnel element, there is explore. So it's a report where you go custom build the explore, and in there you can build a funnel. The problem I've seen with just the explore is you really got to know the data and what like metrics can be used with what, and it tends to be the dimensions and metrics, some aren't compatible with each other. So because of that, you've kind of got to, it's a bit of trial and error. There's no That would be a nice feature for Google. If you drag something in, it would just grey everything out, which you cannot use with it. At the moment, is you can drag and drop everything, and then when you go to build the report, it doesn't work, and you've got to do one at a time, removing one thing at a time, and kind of, oh, it's that, oh, yeah. So you can build a funnel. It is there. I know with the new Universal Analytics, if you had something like the basket set up as the tracking, you had that as a pre-built report. You got to go build it yourself now.
And I think that's one thing that's sort of coming across here is you're sort of going in there and it's a blank canvas and you've got to draw your own pictures, whereas before you sort of had a pre-drawn set of pictures and then you could tweak them and adjust them. So is there going to be a sort of opportunity or a market for people to almost sell preloaded reports or provide people with preloaded reports? Is that going to be a thing?
Probably. You probably find it's kind of like someone logging in and I'll go and build these predefined reports, which I've got the blueprint of how to do it.
Could you actually import them? Is there a function where you could import
there's no import. I think there might be a public area, but I'm still waiting to see how Google interacts with everyone. And because when I clicked share, I was like, oh, we've built this. Is this going to be published to everyone, or is it just everyone to that site? And it was just everyone to that site.
Right, so it's not going into like an open source forum or group of developers or anything.
Yeah.
Okay. And what's your thoughts? So Google have said they're sunsetting it, basically no longer supporting it, switching it off. Are they actually going to turn the plug off, or is it just going to wither and die over time? What do you think? What's your sort of thoughts on that?
I think what will happen is they will have access to the data, the historical data, and when we talk about sunset, it will be no new traffic will be tracked. So they'll turn off that element, but you'll have access to the historical data. I don't know for how long. It's
because they'll have a cost associated with just the electricity and the cooling and to keep all those servers switched on.
Yeah, and I think this is why Google have migrated to this GA4. So because they built it from the ground up, they've kind of rebuilt the whole infrastructure of how they do everything. Think about
so Google are trying to save their electricity bill.
They could be, yeah. But you think of like how technology's improved, or like how you store data, and there's better ways of doing it, more efficient ways of doing it. It's no surprise we're getting to the point now where they're kind of going, actually, there's better ways of doing this.
Oh, and I'm sure they've been tweaking it in the background and everything, but yeah, if fundamental base code was written 17 years ago, it's the technology's certainly moved on. We've only got to look at what's changed in our world in the last 2 or 3 years whilst we've been building Bosco, and that's already changed.
But then you also tie in with more people using analytics, more people tracking, and everyone has mobile phone now, so there's more data being captured. It's probably exponentially growth over the last few years compared to where it was in like 2010.
Okay. So just quickly before we wrap up, if you do want to stay on, and we can take some more questions. We can get you to switch your cameras on. You can put Mike on the spot. And then what are your sort of 3 takeaways, Mike, for everybody? If you're going to look at this now, or if you want to go and check what you've already done, what are the 3 key things that we need to be looking at?
So the first one will be make sure you're set up as soon as possible. So it's being able to have that year-on-year comparison. The next one will probably be like the UTM tracking. So is everything set up correctly so you can then track the correct channels? And then the third one is start using it as soon as possible. Now, that's probably one thing where I've seen people do. We've got it set up, but they're still using the old one. How is it people supposed to start learning how to use the new one if they're constantly still in the old one? So I reckon it'll get to the point like next year, or even make a New Year's resolution to say, I'm going to start using this for my weekly reports or monthly reports.
Okay, someone's just asked a sort of variant on that question. I don't know if it sort of covers it. Is for those who have migrated but haven't actually started doing anything with it yet, what are the top e-commerce, so top tips for an e-commerce sort of to go away and then start using it and build it out? Is there anything specific for an e-commerce business that they should really go and do? And so I suppose one of your tips there would just go start using it, but when you start using it, what areas should you be using?
So first of all, I would go back and say, you've migrated, have you gone and checked everything is tracking correctly? Because there's an element of, yes, it's live, it's done, it's working, but actually, have you done some type of validation to say, these are the number of sales which were tracked in maybe Universal or even your backend system. What's the percentage? Can I improve that percentage? Then you go one step further and go, in those orders, have the correct things been tracked? So the correct products, the correct quantities, revenue, tax, shipping. Because I found it over the last 10 years, some basic information there can be wrong, and it could be it's doubled up. It could be we're not
taking off the VAT and then everything's over by 20%. Or
so there can be quite, and it's that validation where a large chunk of the times, if there is going to be any issues with e-commerce, it's that. Now, from an e-commerce point of view, this can be as easy or as complex as you would like it to be. So you have the ability to add additional tracking to the site. You can track every product that's been viewed. That will be logged as like an impression of the product. Every click on a product, every time it's added to the basket, every time it's been removed from the basket, and you start to understand the mix of products which are being sold and what is popular, not just from a purchase point of view, but from also a people are considering it.
Okay. So we're out of time. We've gone a little bit over, which breaks one of my normal rules. But if anybody would like to stay on, just hang around. We've got another session on the 25th, as we said, which we'll send you all a link if you want to register for. But at the same time on the 25th, where Andrea, who's going to be talking, she's one of our planners and works across our large clients and on the agency side of the business, helping them plan all their media. So she's got a real sort of passion around tracking and what the future of cookieless looks like. So join us for that. We think we're going to have a couple of clients on live as well. So again, if you're on the audience now and you'd actually like to be up here with the camera on, feel free to drop me a note and join us. And then I suppose the other bit is, don't forget, if you want your free GA4 migration audit, just email your URL to me. That's Emmy, not John, but I'll get the John hat as well. But it's me, Emmy at askbosco.io. And then if you do want to stay online now, just stay on, and then we can through the system we can get you to put your camera on. If you don't, we can just jump off. And thank you very much for attending. So yeah, if you do want to jump on, stick it in the Q&A and we'll switch your camera on.